I'm
Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I am your host, Janet Kira Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And we have a very special guest today, Stephen D. Kelley. And Stephen has, we met Stephen a few years ago at a conference, and he was presenting his information on the DUMS and especially the Getty Museum. Dr. Lesson, would you like to say something before we bring on Stephen? Anyway, we just all just liked each other a lot. We hung around together at the conference, and it's felt like a long-lost friend, and we've been communicating here again, and we come on each other's show once in a while. Okay, your turn, honey.
Okay, well, today's a really important issue is that how the mainstream and those who control the media outlets of the mainstream sanction or, in other words, try to block and ruin information that they find damaging because it's true. And our very station has been attacked, and Stephen's going to tell us about it.
So welcome, Stephen, to the show.
Hi, Janet. Hi, Sasha. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. So what happened? You're going to tell us about when you were on the show, something happened, and
well, yeah, we get into that, but before we get into that, we got to do the pleasantries. First of all, yes, you guys were when I first what was it, November 2012, when we did the Alchemy event out here in Irvine, California. I got to meet you guys and hang out and have fun, and that was fun. You guys, I spent more time with you guys, I think, than anyone else there at the event, but we had a lot of fun, and obviously it's been a little while since you've been back out in California. You're over in Hawaii, so it's not easy to hang out anymore, but when are you going to come back to California?
Well, we're looking for another event to come back to, so let us know what's happening, and we'll fly over.
We'll have to put one on or something.
Yeah, let's put one on. We were going to come over in June and do the Anunnaki event, the Anunnaki, Ancient Aliens and Anunnaki, and that fell through. We weren't the ones organizing it, and so, but we put up some ads, and we still get people saying that would be a great idea to do an Anunnaki conference. So, but we love doing conferences. It's just money, that's stuff that we all have to have, money to put them on.
Yeah, that's true. Money is a necessary evil. Well, anyway, real quick, before I talk about the subject that you just brought up there, Sasha, I just want to give a real quick kind of background for people who don't really know what I am. I know you briefly mentioned my big thing, of course, was divulging the big secret that there's a huge city underneath the Getty Museum out here in Los Angeles Museum, which is part of this big continuity of government bunkers for the elite thing. And obviously that's a big deal, and getting that information out there was a big deal. But again, I'm not two-dimensional, and since I've gotten involved with Revolution Radio and joined you guys here on Revolution Radio, I've kind of gone into a focus which on my show, which is becoming really focused on some of the current events. The war in Syria, the war in not Yugoslavia, but the Ukraine, and other types of situations like that. Obviously, we talk about Israel, and we talk about these various, Iraq, ISIS, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been very topical, and I've been working very hard myself, and Sean, of course, is my producer, and he's a witness to this. We've been working really hard to try to make an effect on these wars that are going on, and this is the thing that we're going to talk about, because yes, we are under attack. The Revolution Radio, of course, is the number one alternative media source out there, and I know that since I've come on the station, I've seen our listenership go up at least 50 times, which sounds pretty incredible. I don't know if you guys follow the numbers, but seriously, I've been following the numbers since day one, and we're not really supposed to do that, but
Tell me my numbers so you can follow the numbers and tell me what we're getting.
Well, it's if you start doing that, you can't really just go in there day one and look at it and figure out what's going on. You got to kind of watch the whole thing, because there is a certain amount of error, and what we're really watching is growth. So if you see growth, then you'll notice if it starts going in the other direction. Because it's kind of the actual number really isn't what's important. It's more of the momentum and the movement, and upwards or downwards that really tells us what's going on. But I know that we've been having some very important shows, and it seems like every show we have, it's almost even has more gravity and more importance. And I know that we've, and I'll just give you an example. The first really big show we had, we've had some really big shows, but the one that really put us on the map and seemed to draw a lot of attention, even more attention, Revolution Radio, is when we started doing the show with the guys from Damascus, just some average guys that I met that we brought in on the show from Damascus, and this was right before the Obama was getting ready to go there and start a bombing campaign over there in Syria. And we brought these guys in, and the listeners were able to see that these are normal humans and have lives, and they're intelligent and sensitive and just like us. And I think that we had incredible listeners numbers for that particular show, and those particular guests went on to appear on other channels, and I think that we've kind of started a momentum, not just here on Revolution Radio, but other alternative media sources started focusing more and more on that particular issue. And I think we scared the powers that be out of an adventure in Syria. I think they realized that the American people were not behind them in that policy. And the guests, we had so many people call in and speak with those particular guests, saying things like, our leaders do not represent us, we support you, and on and on and on, and things like this. And I think that really kind of put us on the map. But I just got through doing a show here, and this is the kind of what we're, the point of what we're talking about right now, and again, Sean, of course, can vouch for this, but we had a guy on who was the official representative of the Republic of Donetsk, which is eastern Ukraine, one of the republics that's being, they're trying to slaughter 4 million ethnic Russians, commit genocide right there by these Nazi Ukrainian junta from the western part of the country that the United States and NATO and the European Union have decided to give $5 billion to, so that they could start some sort of World War III with Russia and prop up the failing petrodollar, which is going away really quick. But anyway, Revolution Radio, we have really good servers. We of all the alternative radio stations out there, and I know you guys can vouch for me, but we do a really good job of maintaining our connections to the server and preventing hackers and things like this. And that particular show, we had also, I mean, we were really attacked. The numbers were like ridiculously low. I'm not even supposed to say this, but they were, they were the lowest numbers I've ever seen, even lower than my first day on the darn network. Mm-hmm. And then Sean, the producer, of course, was completely kicked out of Skype. He had to dump the program and reload it, and we lost about a half an hour of airtime because of that. I mean, that has never happened before. We've even ever since Microsoft bought Skype, of course, things have been getting worse. With the daily, when you get updates from Microsoft, they want to install a new backdoor for the NSA. That's all that is, and the same thing.
Our show for about 5 minutes last week. So,
only 5 minutes?
Well, Sean got us back up and running, but we had to switch to our phones.
Oh.
All the guests had to go to our cell phones rather than being on Skype. That was the only way we could stay connected.
That's awful. But we were dealing with people in a war zone who, and typically when we do the shows in Syria and whatnot, we never know when they're going to have electricity and when they're going to, when the internet is going to be working. And they had better internet than we did, which is crazy. So clearly they did not want us to have that show. But to get to the point of all this, and Sean, you know what I'm talking about, is that when all was said and done, I realized that there was very little that we, here in the United States can do for these people. Obviously we can barely control our own leaders, let alone what they do in other countries. But what we could do as humans, as fellow humans, is we can give them emotional and psychological support and give them hope and strength. And that's, when you get down to it, in a battlefield type situation, human against human, the one that is going to persevere is the one that has the best morale, and that's what we do when we communicate with people like that, and we give them support and encouragement and strength. It allows them to continue soldiering on and fighting, and I think that's the best thing we can do.
I don't see why there can't be some way that some kind of regional devolution of authority so that nobody's bossing anybody.
That's an interesting point, though, and I'll tell you something else that came out of that show, and this is kind of a tenuous, kind of a vague concept, and it's something that we don't really understand here in the United States. But one of the callers was asking about the sovereign nature of the country of Ukraine, and he was asking, is Ukraine a sovereign nation? Here in the United States, that word has a certain meaning, but over in a country like that, in Europe, especially countries that have been balkanized and reassembled and picked apart and gone through all sorts of manipulations, they don't understand the concept the same way we understand it. So in other words, you've got groups, large groups of disparate ethnicities that are being lumped together, kind of like the situation in the former Yugoslavia. It's very similar to what happened there in Ukraine. And so you've got people that a little bit of this country was taken, they take a little bit of that country, they give away a little bit of this country. You've got these groups, the former this, the former that. They put them all together and call it a country and put it within a new, human-created border. And the only thing that really holds that together is force. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at what happened over there in Ukraine, and it's really hard to understand, it was a democracy, somewhat. And yes, it was part of the former Soviet Union, and yes, obviously there's, millions of Russians, ethnic Russians living in that country. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is that they don't really, they never really had the same type of leadership and sovereignty and cohesiveness and homogeneity that we like to think that we have. You know, the United States, we have all these different states with the different cultures per state, but we all kind of think of ourselves as American. They don't do that over there. You know, and when the United States decided that we wanted to, destroy Russia, which obviously that's what NATO has always been about since day one, has been about destroying Russia, they looked for a group of people that they could access and promote that would help them to achieve that job. And they found Banderites, which are former Nazis left over from World War II, that occupy a small section of that country, and they gave them $5 billion. And then they shipped in a bunch of CIA operatives and agent provocateurs and this sort of thing, and they created riots and dissension and all that and everything. You remember when all the riots were happening in Ukraine and they were rebelling against the government over here in the U.S., we thought, oh wow, those people in Ukraine, they really know how to get their freedom. They're standing up against their corrupt leaders. And we had no idea that entire thing was a contrived process of destroying the country that the United States was absolutely 100% behind. And look who they put in power. The guy that they removed from power was certainly no saint, but his level of corruption compared to the people that are running the country now is almost non-existent. So clearly, we're talking about the media. I mean, you were talking about leaders, Sasha, but I guess the media is a big issue. You know, what we're hearing here in the U.S. and in Western media. And then, of course,
I don't think we ever get the truth here. I think it's all propaganda. And I think if you really look at the current wars, you have to go back to how this whole system started in the first place, which actually goes back to the Anunnaki. And it's just been a series of wars that have been artificially created to keep us separate, not feeling our oneness and feeling connected.
Yeah, I think Václav Havel has shown us when he let the Czechoslovakia divide into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and they blessed each other and they cooperated. There's no reason why people have to be in forced marriage. Divorce should be possible, in my not very humble opinion.
Well, I just gotta mention one thing about Havel. I guess he was a prime minister, whatever, there recently, and here in the West we celebrate that person. And I learned today that in the Czech Republic, which is just part of the country, the other half is Slovakia, I guess. They did a poll over there in the Czech Republic asking who was the greatest leader and which in their history, and out of all their leaders in their history, which one was the most destructive for the country. And they had, by like an 85% margin, they voted Václav Havel as the most destructive leader they've ever had in that country. And yet we love him here in the West, but in the very country that he was the leader of, they think he's the worst thing that ever happened.
But look at it this way: that destructive. Yes, he destroyed a artificial country that wasn't a country, and what he did is he allowed two independent and vital countries to go their own way. So
Sasha, that's what we call balkanization, right? You're familiar with the term balkanization, right?
I think that it's a regional autonomy is useful to the people who want to hang out together and don't want to be bound by the decisions of other people.
Well, they're going to be doing that here in the USA, too. They want to do that in California. They'd like to break us up into 6 different entities and destroy our power. But let's, if we want to get historical, let's look at Yugoslavia under Tito. All right, okay. The former Yugoslavia under Tito. Say what you will about Tito. It's kind of similar to the same thing Saddam Hussein was doing. But prior to Tito's death, Yugoslavia was an incredibly dynamic country in Eastern Europe. And they were so advanced of a country, and people here in the United States and the Western countries, we look at them as being kind of a low life, peon, hillbilly, hick, Eastern European dummies. The reality is so far from truth. Yugoslavia had a space program on par with the United States space program, and in fact, nobody realizes this, but the Apollo space program owes a lot to Yugoslavia. We basically bought everything that they had, and that was the basis of our space program. The other thing is that Nikola Tesla, the greatest brain that ever came from the world, came from Yugoslavia, or one of their republics. And, you know, if you look at, like, the very first hydroelectric power generating station ever built was in the United States. It was at Niagara Falls. The second one ever built was in Yugoslavia. So this country is not a slouch. They had extensive weapon building capabilities. I mean, people laugh at the Yugo, and yet we imported it into the United States. So this is an itty-bitty little country, and they actually were able to produce a product that was capable of being imported to the United States. We can't have that. We did not want a strong Yugoslavia, just like we don't want a strong Syria, we don't want a strong Iraq, we don't want a strong anything. And what do? We go in there and we divide and conquer, and that's what they're doing everywhere. That's the same thing Obama's doing here in the United States. That's the same thing that everybody is doing. It's all, and then I'm sure you get back to the Anunnaki, that's probably right out of their playbook. Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and play off against each other.
But it's a false unification to begin with, because it just goes back to, you know, the Nazis have always been here, and they've been the Anunnaki, and they go back all the way to the Sumer, and then
Nephilim,
the Babylon, and then through Rome, and then through Britain, and then over here. But it's always been a false reality that, you know, the United States has never been independent. It's still connected to Rome, still connected to Babylon. So it's Orwell's 1984. And the three major false countries, you know, in Orwell's 84 were three, I forget what they call, but they were false countries, and they had three factions warring against each other. It's the three major religions: Muslim, Judaism, and Christianity.
Hey, what about China, honey?
Well, you know, they're in there. But anyway, probably that's another. All the religions are subdivisions, you know, an excuse to be, you know, self against a parent other. You know,
yeah, well, I really hate the concept of religion, you know, and that's why I talk about Satan or something. It goes, oh, you're talking about religion. I'm like, screw that. Satan is an entity that's been around here probably 1 billion years, and you're going to somehow connect that to a silly man-made religion that's, barely a couple thousand years old?
Right.
It's preposterous. Now, you mentioned the Nazis, though.
I'm more like John Lennon. Imagine there's no country. Imagine there's no religion. Because to me, that's all false dichotomies creating separation from each other. So we're just playing out this. We're all puppets. But go ahead. What was your question?
No, I was going to say something about the Nazis and the Zionists being two sides of the same coin. But when you mentioned John Lennon, it reminded me of a story of a guy, a buddy of mine who died many years ago, who had that play. He wanted that played at his funeral. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine how that went over in the church.
Yeah. So, but this all ties into, you know, you when we first met you were doing the Getty Museum. So there's all these underground installations. Apparently, some of them are very ancient. There's an underground railroad that belongs to whoever was the original culture here. You can go to coast in 1 hour or around the planet. There's a story about Admiral Byrd. He went down, I was looking at today, he went down to Antarctica with his forces, and so there's always this one force against the other force. But we don't have the information. This is just a little war that's being generated to, you know, divide and conquer, and we're always so busy.
We should talk about Admiral Byrd for a minute.
Okay. I don't know a lot, but I've been looking at it. But go ahead. Tell me what you know.
Well, the biggest secret in the world is that the Earth is a big geode, and it's hollow. It's filled with air inside. People, and that is, there are still quite a few people coming out trying to screw with that reality. And I know there's, oh my God, even people within our community are trying to come out and tell us that there's caverns and pockets and everything. The last thing they want any of us here on the surface to know is that there is a completely another civilization in the center of the Earth, and not the center of the Earth, but 800 miles down.
Right. You know, it's supposed to be very advanced, and they don't have all this conflict like we have.
Well, actually, they do have conflict. There are different cultures. You know, Agartha and Shambhala are actually two separate cultures inside of there, and they do war. But the thing is, though, is that those cultures, have been around hundreds of thousands of years. You know, it's not like we have 20,000 year epochs, and it takes about 10,000 years just for culture to even develop. So that's why the Bible only covers this relatively, chronicles 7,000 years, something like that.
Does our covert military have their excavating machines that can make these wonderful things and turn rock into cement and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. They've got their nuclear-powered boreholes or bore machines that can drill 7 miles a day, and they've been running those things for 50 years.
Wow.
So those 7 miles a day. How many miles is that in a year's time? They can go pretty far. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. But though, I think, when you start talking about the military, it's alleged that Area 51 actually has an elevator that goes all the way down 800 miles into the interior. And I suspect that is probably true. And this elevator supposedly is actually manned by, I don't know what you want to call these entities that live that live on the inside, if they're remnants of the Anunnaki or what they are. But I suspect that they probably are Anunnaki. They're big, tall, humans.
Yeah.
So that sounds like Anunnaki, huh?
Well, I had a guest on, not Revolution, but another one of my shows I did, and I forget his name, I'm sorry, but he was the one that was down into the Hollow Earth, and he had come up here as an infant. He volunteered, and so it really sounds strange, but apparently they can, create another form, so they sent him up here as an infant, even though he was an adult in their culture, and he's been here for since 1951 or something. And he was discovered by his school. He never missed a question, so they graduated him, and then he ended up going into the military. I think the Air Force was the one that took him in, and then they gave him an advanced ranking, and then he was in the Area 51, and he went down to the 27th level. That's what he called it. And the first train that he got took him to Mount Shasta, and there his father came up and said, "Here, son, I'm your father." So they restored all of his memories. Okay, so what we heard from another source is that Enki was last seen in Mount Shasta, and there's a whole, of course, the New Age community has this whole story about there's a big city under Shasta, and it's they're all connected to each other. So we have all these factions. I think you're right. There's the Shambhala and Agartha, and there's probably some reptilians that have been here since previous passings of Nibiru, and most planets probably do have this same type of structure, being a geosphere with the hollow Earth or the inner Earth or a community inside. Yeah. That's what I'm coming up with, and it's all connected. And then Admiral Byrd went to the South Pole and the North Pole. In the North Pole, he went in, I think, 17 miles, and then recently, Linda Moulton Howe and Whitley Strieber had a guest on, and they were talking about there's a huge pyramid at the North Pole, and there's one at the South Pole, but the one at the North Pole is still operational, and it could power. They said it was so powerful it could power all of Canada right now if we would just hook into the grid. So these are all I watch YouTubes all the time, and I'm going, well, that's connected to that, it's connected to that, it's connected to that, and then you're on the show and you're dealing with the current stuff that ends up on Fox News and CNN, and I can't sort out propaganda from truth for the life of me, because we're over here in this what do you call this matrix over here called America, and we're not getting hardly any of the truth unless this show's happening.
Yeah, well, what do you think is going to come down in the former Ukraine, the Donetsk Republic? There's got to be something. The whole world isn't going to go to war over this.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sasha, and it's clearly baiting the bear, because obviously trying to commit genocide against 6 million Russians, how long is the Russian people, especially the Russian leadership, Vladimir Putin specifically, it's extremely difficult for them to sit there and watch this happening and do everything they can to avoid getting sucked into the trap, because the reason why we gave those Nazis the $5 billion to destroy that country was to do exactly what they're doing now, and that is to provoke Russia into a war, preferably a nuclear war, to achieve certain purposes. One is to shut down the formation of BRICS, which is going to destroy the International Monetary Fund as well as the American, European, NATO dominance of the entire world. It's definitely a dagger in the side of the Rothschilds family, and they're going to do everything they can to stop it. And, remember, Putin did kick the Rothschilds out of Russia, and Russia is probably one of the last, 7 countries that doesn't have a Rothschild-owned central bank. And, I posted a graphic today on Facebook that showed the national debt of all the countries in the world. And here's Russia, one of the few countries in the world that's actually in the black. You look at the United States, we're possibly upwards of $200 trillion in debt. And then we've got this enemy who is actually in the black, who actually has money. We are, we think that we're so superior with our ridiculously large military and our gadgets and toys and lifestyles, but it's completely living on borrowed time. It's an absolute bubble, and whatever money we think we have in the United States in reality is non-existent, because there hasn't been any money in the United States for probably 100 years. We're working on debt, and the only thing that keeps this country afloat is constantly stealing from everybody else. And the rest of the world is waking up to this, and that's why BRICS was formed, to offer an alternative to the International Monetary Fund and the hegemony of the American dollar and the Rothschild family.
So if I understand, it's BRICS, and particularly Mr. Putin and the Russian, who are the ones that are standing up to the Warburg-Rothschild-Lee cartel, and they're not, as I had thought, by your analysis, dominated. I thought everybody was dominated by this cartel, even the Chinese and the Russians.
But they're not, apparently. So if you just follow who benefits from a nuclear holocaust, then you get who's actually orchestrating this, because, we're one system. So obviously,
right,
looking at it from this perspective, we're all going to die. So who benefits from killing off the majority of the population, the majority of life on this earth? Who benefits? What
probably the Anunnaki. Probably.
Is it the Anunnaki, or is it the Greys, or is it
ultimately, when you get down to it, that's what it really is. Because, and I'll tell you this, we talk about the universe, first of all, this is not the only planet in the universe that has human life on it, or any life on it for that matter at all. But typically, most planets, especially one similar to this, where we have a recycling soul university training ground system, have a certain number of souls, typically 200 million souls total. And the reason for this is because you need those souls to get old. They've got to cycle before they get anywhere.
200 million souls, we have 7.5 billion.
Right. So what happens?
200 million souls and 7.5
when creation, or when the birth cycle outpaces the amount of souls that are in the vault, so to speak, the creator basically has to create virginal baby souls for all of these new people. So what's happening now is you've got a tiny minority of old souls that are having to rub elbows with a bunch of immature, retarded souls, if you will. And this is why they want to reduce the population. And it's not just because of the resources. Obviously, resources is part of the problem. But the way they see it, there are too many bodies with too many immature souls, and they need to get rid of them so that we can all hurry up, go through our training cycles, our reincarnation cycles, and graduate. So all this overpopulation stifles the ability of the whole to graduate, because we don't graduate until every single soul here reaches enlightenment, so to speak.
No.
That's right.
I don't think
that's why. Well,
hypothesis, but I don't get that.
We have to bring them all with us, basically, and this is why it's so important.
Have you read the information by the Newton Institute of how they've done the analysis of thousands and thousands of people who have gone to Life Between Lives and Interstate, and so I don't think that's quite. Although they are continually creating young souls, but the young souls are cycling from source, and so we're continuing. That's a bigger cycle. There's a universal cycle of souls continually going.
Roger Wilger says that all the animals are getting on stage as humans for the final act.
Yeah. So,
I agree.
He agrees. But I think that we have a lot of young souls. But if we had a conscious, civilized civilization, all this could be managed. This is an artificial construct, creating artificial limitations and boundaries. We have more than enough for everybody. If we had space travel, we could colonize the universe. This is a Errol the Gray from Roswell. And I don't know if this is 100% true. We had Lawrence R. Spencer on, was it last week? And that's when we got bounced. And he was saying that this is a prison planet. Errol said that this is a prison planet, and she's a Gray.
I don't trust her.
We don't trust her, but let's just look at the story. She says that she's trillions of years old. They've had millions of lifetimes. She's not limited to a particular form. She chose to come into a Gray, called it a doll body. It wasn't even alive. It wasn't even biological. It was kind of more like an android, just so she could deliver the crafts to Roswell so that we could accelerate our, they wanted humanity to catch up. There is something about the birth, life, death cycle that accelerates consciousness and the evolution of consciousness and helps a species become enlightened faster. So, this is just a game. It's just a virtual reality game. So here we are with pending war. We're all going to die. So is that going to be what makes us wake up before the button is pushed?
Well, there's a couple different possibilities for different timelines, and we can get into that real quick, but there's another factor that we need to also consider here, and it's not just this whole soul maturation process that they're concerned about. It's also a control process. There's too many humans on this earth for them to control, and they need to reduce the population a la Georgia Guidestones to roughly 500 million so that we can be more easily managed by these entities.
At that. They've created this huge system. I've talked to an Illuminati billionaire, and she says, they like people to lord over. They like to have someone to look their nose down on, and they like this culture where there's a vast amount of people that are poor because they all, they're like the rock star. They're rich. So I don't know. That is a story, and I've followed the Guidestones, and I think that was also part of William Cooper's Alternative 1, 2, and 3. But it just doesn't seem logical that they would be able to sustain their lifestyles with pulling humanity down to a 500 million population.
Well, let me describe how that's possible, because a lot of people don't really understand. But if you look at the Rothschild family, really, and you look at the way that they've been able to collect all the wealth of the world and essentially take about 98% of all the wealth there is and pile it away downstairs in a big bunker. 50% of the gross national product of the United States, whether people believe it or not, has been going down into a hole to create these alternative cities down below. And people think, why would they kill us off? Don't they need us for slaves? Well, the point is that in the last 100 years or so, they've been building these bunkers, they've been building these cities, they're already stocked with food, they've got the Tesla technology, they've got their slaves, they've got their clones, they've got all this alien technology, they've got everything going down there, they've got most of the wealth of the world already stashed down there. They've certainly collected up all the gold to pay off the Anunnaki when they show up. I mean, that's why they're trying to buy back people's gold. And I mean, it's like we're down to, they're getting ready to pull the gold out of our teeth. That's about all there is left. They're picking the last little bits of wealth off of our corpse. And so when you say, what do they have to gain? It's like you look at these people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham that are these war hawks. They're saying, we don't care if we start a nuclear war with China and Russia. And you think, how could these guys be so insane? Well, there's a method to their madness. They know that if they promote war and they promote genocide and they promote World War III, that they have these special places down in these bunkers promised to them, and if they don't do their jobs and be good little, genocidal maniacs and Nazis, that they don't get to move into their gold-covered condos downstairs. That's why they do that.
Stephen, my experience is that when people cause other people's death, while they're still alive, they are haunted by the thoughts, and when they die, and the people that have come back after having death experiences, they experience all the pain they inflicted on everybody else instantaneously as their karmic message, and so you can't ever escape your karma. That's what I think.
So, for this to be true and accurate or real or whatever, so are they out of the cycle of birth, life, and death? Because are they never going to die? Are they never going to experience the ramifications of their actions?
Well, this kind of gets to the key of the whole thing on a universal level, and that is the separation of cultures into a service to self and a service to others. And as you probably heard me say before, we do have multiple levels of reality which are not dimensions but rather densities, and this transition that we are on the verge of making is actually a graduation transition to a higher level of density, which is the fourth density, and this is the density or the reality that is the home to all of these aliens that we're dealing with. Not necessarily the Anunnaki. I think the Anunnaki are still third density entities, advanced, although advanced. But the thing is, though, is that when we go from this level, the third level density, to the fourth level density, we split up. People go on different timelines, and those that choose the service to others timeline, they go in a completely different reality than the ones that choose the service to self timeline.
Right.
So these people that we're talking about, these so-called leaders and these Anunnaki types and the dark ones, if you will, the grays, the reptoids, et cetera, these are entities that have all chosen the service to self path prior to moving into the fourth density. And once they make that decision, they're stuck. They're there for the rest of the duration, and not just one lifetime, but for the rest of their reality. I mean, for the rest of time, as far as they're concerned. And I just want to say that ultimately everything does go back to source, and even those entities that chose the service to self path, they will also go back to source, although a lot later than those of us that choose the service to others path.
Well, looking at the Errol the Gray, Roswell Gray hypothesis, which I don't, it's not proven, it's just a theory, she was saying that the reason they play the game, and this is a virtual reality game, is because it's fun playing the game rather than not having a game to play. So when you're in Om Namah Shivaya and everything is one, and you're feeling everybody, and you have total compassion, empathy, and everybody, sits around playing harps all day, that becomes boring. And so the game was created, this reality was created, so it's really, from their perspective, that none of this is good or bad, or ugly or anything. It's just all isness. Mm-hmm. And they say that we are is-bees. We are eternal. We is and we be. That's the best translation that she could come up with, is be. We are eternal beings. We're all eternal beings that are here. And so part of the realization is to wake up and realize that you are in this game, that you are the chooser. See, my correlation with all this stuff is I was taken on board a ship when I was 4 years old. As soon as I got up onto the ship, I was my eternal self. I had all my memories of everything that ever happened to me from the dawn of existence. I was shown as I was in this 4-year-old body, right? So there were some things done to make it comfortable, because we're actually symbiotic creatures. This is the Dr. Michael Newton's Institute's information, that human beings our souls are one thing, and we come into our bodies, and so we are in a symbiotic relationship with our bodies. So we have an obligation to our bodies. So they created an environment and a situation for my body self to be able to integrate and understand what was going on. They showed me 24 multiverses, possible future histories that I, as the chooser, could participate in. And one was complete destruction of the planet blown up into smithereens, into stardust, and they were gradually better and better, less destruction, more life, more diversity, until finally there were several utopian realities. And so they asked me, which one do I want? And it was all telepathic. There's no words. We don't use our mouths. And I chose one of the utopian ones, and that was 1958. And of course, Montauk came in 63, and every 20 years with the biorhythms, they alternate, they take away the timelines, and so they make different timelines. So that's one thing that happened. But another thing that happened more recently is that I was in an underwater installation off of Johnston Atoll. And there I was taken there by Greys, about 6 Greys, and there were probably a dozen Greys in the facility. But I was escorted down into this hollow earth. So I've actually been in this facility. There were 1,000 Anunnaki, and they were all taller than me. I'm only 5'2", but some of them were 12 feet tall. They would come in behind me, and gradually they were like 12 feet tall. So that happened to me, and they did not knock me out. They did not make me forget. So there's something going on here. That's why I'm in this whole thing, trying to investigate, because, of course, I can sit here and I can call myself crazy, but the more I interview people and put the pieces together, the more there's something going on here. And it is about this reality that's being created by our thoughts, words, and deeds, what we're holding together here. Go ahead, Sash.
Well, just from my somewhat unique perspective, I find it interesting to embrace both service to others and service to self. I find if I put too much energy into service to others, I drain myself and resent those whom I'm supposedly serving, just as if I serve myself too much, no one wants to interact with me. And so I like to center myself and embrace both. And I think perhaps the key to reaching this so-called Illuminati, or the bad ones, is to realize that we have resonating aspects within ourselves. And if we can just find out what those parts need, if the Illuminati need to feel like they're important, or they get attention, or they get affection, maybe there's some less lethal ways that we can give it to ourselves than to them.
Well, let me just say this, Sasha, and because I believe that as a human, it's almost impossible to become 100% service to others. I think very few, maybe Jesus might have been able to accomplish that, but otherwise, the only one to even come close, I think, may have been Gandhi. So, all I'm saying is that we need to try to be at least 51% service to others, and that's all it takes to graduate. You just have to be a slightly more service to others than service to self. So that 1% isn't going to make a lot of difference. And by the same token, people all the time say, oh, I met this reptoid and he was really nice. And I thought, oh, okay, that's 49% service to others. It's still the majority service to self. They come off really nice, but that 1 or 2%, they may come off as pretty reasonable, benevolent creatures, but it doesn't matter. You're still, that 1% makes all the difference in the world, or the universe, if you will.
I agree. Thank you. You brought clarity. Yeah, I agree with you now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of sociopathic humans now. It seems like there's more and more people that when they show up in your presence, they're really nice. And then it's like,
let me clarify this.
Spiritual.
Yeah, I want to just add one more thing to clarify this. A lot of, you see, the thing is, but if you look at the difference between a service to self entity and a service to others entity, in their heart of hearts, they believe that their methods are righteous and that they're doing the right thing. And a good example of that would be the conquistadors. When they came to the New World, they tried to bring civilization and their religion to the savages, and their efforts ended up in genocide and destruction. But in their own minds, they thought that their methods were righteous and what they were doing was for the good of humanity, and that they were serving. But they were doing it from a standpoint of service to self. So the thing is if you look at it that way, you realize that a service to self entity will try to impose his will on you and believe in his mind that he is serving you by imposing his will and his dominance. Now, the opposite of that would be like the Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry situation, where you've got do not interfere with other civilizations. And a good example of that would be the Pleiadians, or the true benevolent entities that are out there. They are currently at war. There is a war going on just above our heads between those entities and the ones here on Earth, and whether or not that is the Anunnaki coming back to fight the reptoids, we don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other because I can't say with 100% certainty. But point being is that they will not bother us unless we ask them to.
So you're saying that, so you have a concept of the Anunnaki. We've been examining that with a Michael Lee Hill, who had worked with A.R. Borden. Have you ever heard of A.R. Borden? And A.R. Borden was part of this group called the Linkage Institute, and they're meeting once a year in some private location, either on the Earth or on a ship, and it's many different species, and they've been monitoring the Earth, and apparently they are here. I guess if it really gets extreme, they will intervene, but they've been intervening in some way anyway. What's the theory?
Bob Evans has said there's two things that are already happening. He's got pictures from Soho that actually shows there's some huge motherships that keep zapping incoming stuff, and you can actually see it on film. But Borden says that they manipulated the timeline while the debris from the 180 degree Lagrange points was passing through that would have been Earth-destroying damage. They shifted the timeline until the danger was past, and then they moved us back, and now we have a chance again.
So we're looking at this document, and if anybody out there has any more information on the link or the Linkage Institute, because there was supposed to be all this stuff that would happen with 12/21/12, and the theory is, and this is meeting notes that we have, and I'm not at liberty to post it anywhere yet because it was given to me in confidence, but the verbiage is just like profound, and it's over my head, and it really seems legitimate that these are the actual meeting notes of the group that came together.
Yeah, Enki and Nimma and Ningashita are in this formulation among those that are back and trying to get us free of the Nephilim, the royal crooks they left that took charge when most of them had to back out.
That's the theory.
Okay.
You still there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that this isn't going to fly with too many people, but I'm kind of wondering, because, they say that Jesus Sonata is actually the galactic commander of the Federation of Light, et cetera, and that it's possible that Nibiru is actually a huge Death Star type of planet, which is actually hollow and filled with, huge amounts of life forms. And it is very well possible that the Anunnaki are actually the humanoids that we are expecting to come here and relieve us, whether or not they are of Pleiadian ancestry or any connection to the Pleiades. But it's very well possible that Jesus really, truly is the galactic commander, and that the forces that are coming here to rescue Earth, that is what the second coming is all about. So, you gotta leave the possibility open for anything. And, it's very easy to look at the Anunnaki as potential enemies, and it's also easy to look at them as potential saviors. So it could be either one.
Well, it's partly what the stuff that I've been looking at lately makes me think that our designers, the Nimma and Thoth and Enki, wanted us to do better, to supersede their, not be hooked on who's highest and we'll kill to get on top and to get free of that. And that is, so we don't need to bow down to any extraterrestrial just because they have higher technology. We have our will, and we're not just going to grab the shovels and start digging for gold for them again.
Well, I'm sorry, Janet. I just want to say this because I know, this is kind of the gist of what, this whole Anunnaki thing. And that is that they occupy a higher level of density. So naturally, yes, they have technology, they have abilities, psychic, physical, and otherwise, that we don't have. So it's very easy for primitive humans that are developing on this third level of density to look at a higher level of density and think those are indeed the creator or source, when in the reality is that source is multiple levels above that level. And like you say, Janet or Sasha, we have to realize that they may be above us. They may have had a part in our hybrid creation and hybridization and creation from whatever life forms that they used originally, the proto-human. But ultimately, once we become knowing source and the nature of source, we realize that these higher levels, they are as equal to source as we are. Just because they're above us does not make them better than us. They're on the same path upward that we're on. And ultimately what we learn is that higher levels of density gain favor or gain the ability to move on by assisting lower levels of density. And this is back to that service to others thing. So when we talk about service to others, that doesn't just apply to serving our fellow third density humans. It also applies to serving our second density animals and plants and what have you, and a caretaker of the earth, even inanimate objects, like rocks, same thing.
We'll hold that thought. We'll be back after this break.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Most guys freaks. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filled with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. The heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting the danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
We find that we detect people.
Even if you had the password, it takes you 10 minutes to get in, and you still gotta find the files. Every Monday.
We demand free access to data.
Started learning codes that night.
From 2 to 4 p.m.
The idea of having your own computer, a personal computer, was inconceivable.
Joy. As we progress through high-quality information of all fields. From hacking news to world-important issues. Constant stream of verbal nonsense. There is only one choice, one chance. So tune in to the internet and beyond with Count Foster. Only on Revolution Radio. You think this bad neighborhood?
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
Third Phase of Moon, the largest UFO YouTube channel, is now the largest civilian-run radio station. Join us Thursdays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Third Phase of Moon Radio. Cousins Brothers Productions and Rome Productions working together as researchers on a mission to uncover the truth. Dr. J. Andy Elias will take the listeners on an amazing journey. We will be talking to the top ufologists, UFO experiencers, alien abductees, and taking your calls from around the world. Third Phase of Moon Radio is now on the airwaves on Revolution Radio. Be sure to join us Thursdays, 8 to 10 Eastern. My name's Blake Cousins, and we'll see you again next time.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Janet Kier Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson, and we're in the middle of a fascinating conversation with Stephen D. Kelley. But before we get back to our show, please do take a few minutes and navigate over to that donate button on the website and donate what you can. $1, $10, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can donate will be greatly appreciated. And we do thank you so very much for your donation. So before we get back, I know Sasha has notes, I have notes. I just want to say that the Anunnaki, based on their story, they came through amnesia because they didn't know who the creator of all was. They didn't have a relationship with the creator of all. And they talked about the Galzu species, which was the Watchers that reside in the halls of a Menti in the center or internally or interdimensionally inside every sphere. They are these Watchers that are beings that look at the progress of life that's evolving on the surface or within these spheres, apparently inside as well. And also the other thing I wanted to point out was in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he discovered the Watchers, the Galzu, in the halls of Amenti, and he became an acolyte. He studied with them, and he eventually became enlightened. Now, Thoth is the son of Enki, and of course, Enki, Nima, and Enlil were the holy trinity of the Anunnaki, so to speak. Mother and all that. So when he became enlightened, the Galzu asked him, "Okay, now that you are one of us, what is your work? And his response was, I'm here to see humanity evolve and become a conscious species. So I think we do have beings of light, and even some of the Anunnaki, maybe not each and every one of them, but a faction that is here because they love humanity. I know Nimba, after the Noah's flood, promised that she would not let her children perish again. And that was, of course, attributed to God, but it was actually Mother God, Goddess Nimba. Sasha, do you have anything to say before we bring back
I think that as Stephen has said, the essence of getting out of our dilemma is to let the part of us that can serve others with a good heart be stronger just enough so that that's a generosity of spirit, but it doesn't completely stifle the need for us to serve ourselves. And it's that 1%. Which is to serve others, which is a spiritual part that comes back. And I'm struck as a psychotherapist how that's exactly what happens after we have a person get through their own traumas and how they're reacting symbolically and all that sort of stuff, and they get to be who they are. They get to be so fascinated by their story, they're not interested in anybody else. And the way we cure them of that phase is we have them help others. And that's when they really take the next step in their therapy. And so we're just like that in this karmic schoolroom that we call this existence.
Very good, Sasha. I like it. What you're bringing up, it reminds me also of the way that people deal with alcoholism. I mean, from what I've heard from people that are in the AA program, they do the same thing. It's almost like alcoholism is kind of a personal thing. It's a selfish thing. It's very much so. And part of the process of breaking that dependency on the alcohol is to actually take your focus off yourself and put it on other people.
Right. Yeah. So how do we stop this war in the Ukraine? We can go kind of global and through the ages and up to the spiritual, and there's a way of, the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. There's a way to pull this down into the stories that are on our news every day. And how do we resolve that?
How do you stop people from getting killed in Donetsk?
Yeah. Any ideas?
Well, obviously we're not, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood and all that. We're not here to tell people to take up arms against other people and get revenge and whatnot, because that's exactly what they want. It's all about killing and killing and killing. If we approach this from a service to others philosophy, and I heard it by somebody else, they said it another way, and they look upon it as a selfish society versus a non-selfish society. That's the true growth. And if you look at the problems, so what's going on in the Ukraine, obviously greed is a major factor. The major players of the destroyers over there are the oligarchs, these billionaires who have basically fleeced the country for untold riches. And these are the very same ones that are causing all the problems. And obviously the Rothschild family is probably the ultimate oligarchs. And, surely one family does not need to control 98% of all the wealth of the entire world. People talk about the 1% having all the money. Well, it's even worse than that. It's the 0.001% that really have all the money. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, if we can, rather than fighting with each other and trying to tear down one system, replace it with another, it has nothing to do with control, because a lot of people, they look at this, they say NATO versus Russia, et cetera, et cetera. It's all about who wants to control who. Everybody wants to rule the earth. In a service to others society, a philosophy-based society, that doesn't exist. And this greed and desire to have more wealth than the next guy, that goes away. Wealth will be measured in how much we can serve others. And when we think about receiving, you have to understand that in a service to other society, you will be receiving plenty, because there are going to be people that are going to be making a career, a lifestyle out of giving and they are going to be looking for people to give to. So when I tell people, teach people to do this service to others thing, they come back and they say, I've been trying to serve others as much as possible, but I keep getting people doing things for me, and I feel like I'm never getting ahead because I get so much given to me that I can never give enough to get caught up and be on the other side of the scale. But no, it doesn't work that way. That is how the universe works. The more you give to others, the more the universe will give to you. So, you'll be surprised. The wealth that you will be receiving will be so much more than if you go about it the other way, which is me, serve, greed. I mean, look at, what is money? Money is an energy, and it doesn't do anything unless the energy is exchanged. So when you've got somebody like the Rothschilds or the Queen of England or Soros or any one of these oligarchs that have got billions of dollars in gold locked away in a vault, what's happening to that energy? The energy is not doing anything. It's sitting stagnating. So clearly that's the problem with our society, is that because these greedy oligarch people who are devoting their lives to serving themselves have hoarded away for themselves, the energy is what they're hoarding. And they're depriving the earth of the energy that should be feeding and taking care of everyone. And we, though so many people are struggling just to survive, it's not supposed to be like that. We should be able to work just a little bit, have plenty, and then have so much that we can afford to give to everybody, and we will all realize the benefit. And that's the other thing, people we talk about psychic skills and psychic powers and essentially being able to do magic, including instantaneous manifestation. The quickest way you're going to build that chi and build that energy and that ability to manipulate your own reality is through service to others.
Right, and when you are receiving, you're actually allowing someone to give because they need to give as well. So that's, it's just the flow. Giving and receiving are ultimately the same when it becomes that natural flow. Right. So what was there was something else I wanted to say. What did you want to say, honey? The aliens. They don't have money. The reports we're getting is they don't operate on money. So the money system is a slave system, and definitely the interest creates slavery. But these other systems, these other societies are not using money. Have you heard reports on that type of information?
Well, certainly I was exposed to the whole Billy Meyer crowd and their experience with the Palladians and their references to what they do. And obviously the Palladians are probably our best representation of a service to others society. And yes, they do have a hierarchy system. People think that just because we've graduated, we've moved up to these higher levels, that doesn't mean that we're all going to be able to do star travel and whatnot. Because no, there is.
No.
Well, except for you, Janet. But
okay.
But you know what I mean. It's just that you'll still have societies working hard to develop their infrastructure and build their spacecraft and do all of those things. But there will still be elders and leaders amongst those people, but it will be a fair, non-selfish society, and everything will be considered for. I mean, we are so individual-oriented that it's kind of hard to think, is it truly a better society? But it probably is.
Go ahead, Sash.
I will recognize no king. I'm sovereign.
Yeah, my dad died, so nobody could tell me what to do.
Right. Well, I grew up with Star Trek, and that was not, totally peaceful, right? But it was a better system of society, So I can't imagine it. I think that the Star Trekian society that is going to emerge, it will emerge. That's what I've encountered. I'm sorry. We have a caller. Do you want to take a call? Area code, 313? Would you like to ask your question of Stephen, our guest? Or hello?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to make a comment because I want to give an Islamic twist on things in general. Because,
what's your name? First, what's your name? Just first name.
Oh, my name is Jay.
Jim, okay.
Okay, so basically, we have a hadith on an Islamic true hadith, which was related to the Prophet, because they asked him a question and they couldn't understand what he meant. and they asked him that the Prophet Muhammad was asked the question. They asked him, "Were you the first or the last?" He told them, "I was the first of all prophets." And they said, "How's that possible?" He goes, "Because while we were in creation, I was the light before all lights."
Okay,
so
Steve.
that gives us an ideal that basically that the human beings. Well, I'll give you another hadith in general to certify that, which clearly says that when the Prophet would walk among his members at the time, they would look dumbfounded because he would be walking in the daylight and he would not cast a shadow. And they were like, "How's that possible? You don't have a shadow?" Because I'm also created from light.
Okay, Stephen, would you like to address that?
Well, it wasn't really a question; it was more of a statement. But just if I could just respond in a general way, I would say that what you use, the name that you use for your God or your Creator, it's ultimately the same thing. So people would say there is no God but Allah. If you want to call the source and the Creator Allah, that's fine. It doesn't really matter to me. It's still source.
Right. I think that we have to differentiate between the gods and source, and there's all kinds of people that have walked around being called prophets, being called, God, but we're still looking at all that.
My research leads me to conclude that Allah was probably Nanar Sin, who was in charge of that area, and that Muhammad was a warlord whom he used to extend his turf.
Yeah, it goes, if you go into the Anunnaki information, these gods are pretty much identified by their symbols, and when they came into power, they kept rotating governance based on the astrology, whose turn was it to rule, and so that's what we've been deciphering. There's a theory out there that Jesus was actually Enki, that there was some confusion based on the stories. The stories all get morphed into one big story, and so there was a bunch of gods, and then all of a sudden we have monotheism, and the one god was claiming that he did everything, right, because he was the one in charge. So it was actually a title rather than a being. It was a bunch of individual people that would take turns with a title, but that gets so confused because religions have been translated and manipulated, controlled, and
right,
interpreted.
So, what happens to the wisest people in every religion get beyond the dogma, and they start meditating on, oh my gosh, we're all one with Source. And every tradition, people that really go within, that's where they get to, service to others, and ultimately leading to identification with Source. But in the meantime, as long as the Nephilim, the favored line of the Anunnaki, the Warburg, Lee, Rothschild cartel that runs things, they are basically holding us into this religion which says, do not go within, just do what authority tells you to do and think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and consume and serve yourself.
Buy my beer.
Be me. Be selfish. It is the way.
Got to get a bigger car. You got to compete.
And see, empathy is what breaks it, because if you consider who you are to be humanity, then you feel hunger when your parts of you are hungry, and so it's like that's what lets you. That's love. Love, when you realize we are all one, our natural recognition of that oneness is, we love each other. That's our natural state, and that's what takes us out of this matrix.
Yeah. How can you hate, once you realize that we're all the same person taking turns in a different body, how can you hate yourself when it's in another body? Right. It's all Source. It's all the same thing. And Sasha, when you wake up and when you start developing your psychic skills, that's the first thing that you've got to do. You've got to realize that you can't hate fellow humans for anything. You can hate actions, but you certainly can't hate the human. And that is the epitome or the definition of unconditional love.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all in this play. We've all co-created this play together, and people take turns being the villain. So at the end of the play, who gets the most applause is the villain. Good show, good show. You did a great job.
Summer Raven says, until the birth of peace on earth that only love can bring, I'll help it grow by loving everything.
Yeah. So.
And creation, all of creation too, right? And I'll tell you something, Sasha and Janet. This brings up an interesting point because let's look at the Old Testament, for example. I do not believe that the Creator wants or takes any pleasure in seeing the destruction of any piece of creation. Any piece of creation. So you cannot tell me that the source, God in heaven, or the Creator, has ever asked a human to kill another human or to just take a life of an animal or blood. Only Satan or the dark entity loves to see suffering and relishes the energy that's extracted from the taking of a life and the spilling of blood. And the Creator does not do that.
That's the litmus. Is
right
it love
on.
or not love? And that's what was my awakening when I was, I think it was like 12 years old. My parents were getting on me, go read the Bible, go read the Bible. So I said, oh, okay, I'll go read the Bible.
And then you actually read it and you go, wait a minute, have you guys actually read what it says here?
And I come down and I go, wait, here's this. And it was some scene where God went into a large tent, and killed 500 people. I go, I'm sorry, this is not God.
Yeah, that was not the Creator.
Yeah. So that's what you got to realize, people. That's not God. That's some kind of fairy tale, some kind of crazy people.
Or how about the good one? I'm going to build a stone altar. Oh, go take your son and put him on this altar and stab him to death because I want to test you to see if you're loyal. Yeah, sure. The Creator really did that.
Yeah, that's Yahweh. That's Enlil. And Enlil was trying to get people into his side of the war because he wanted to create a war.
But now we got the Nazis that are still carrying out these dictators' whim here.
Well, the Nazis still held the cross, and the cross goes back to Nibiru. It's all the same entity. They're wearing it on their chest, the Maltese cross, the cross. It goes back to Sumer. And these are all people that are in this faction of the Anunnaki that doesn't love humanity. They wanted the flood to wipe us out. It didn't quite work, and so they're still trying to reduce the population down to 500 million. But I don't think it's going to happen because we have too many. First of all, this is an ongoing genetic experiment that's been going on for millions of years. There's in where was that, in Bosnia or something, Romania. There's a sphinx near a pyramid, right? And if you go into this, we're getting reports on this. If you go in there, you lie down on this altar there. It's like on Star Trek, and it reads you, and it shows you. There's a projection that shows your DNA and where it comes from in the universe, in the galaxy. So you might have some Pleiadian, and you might have some data, and it shows the form that's lying on the table, the DNA, and where it comes from. And then you go through a life review, a history of the planet, and everybody's history is different because it's based on the DNA within the individual person. Go ahead, Sash.
Oh, and I would just like to say that, sometime after the Great Flood, which really wiped everything out when people were rebuilding, there's accumulating evidence, particularly from southern Turkey, from Haran, a site called Göbekli Tepe, that the people with these cone-shaped heads, and Akhenaten may have been one of them, that had focused on Osiris, what he called Osiris, but he was really saying the Nibiru is coming back, and that was what it was all about. But there was this definite, all over the planet now, we're finding skulls of these Capensis people, aliens who were contemporaneous with the Anunnaki of Sumer, and cooperating in rebuilding humanity.
Yeah. I just got distracted. I'm sorry. I was reading chat.
Where are you? You're chatting. Anyway, I think that I think that might be the agenda, reduction of population. We've heard it for years. You know, we had different people that have died for it, and yet there is a faction that's in service to others that I just don't think they're going to allow this agenda to happen where the population gets reduced. Okay, I was just listening today that they were going in and they were turning off nukes. There was a YouTube I was listening to. They were turning off nukes, but they actually went into an individual pilot's craft, and he was about to shoot a UFO, and all of a sudden everything went out in his craft. He was not able to navigate, not able to fire. So I think that, you know, we don't know what we're up against, but eventually they're going to say, just like in 1951, Day the Earth Stood Still. They basically came in and nothing worked. Even guns wouldn't fire. And I think at some point they're going to just say, okay, it's childhood's end. You got to put away your little toys.
Steve Bassett says the president will at some point jump on Congress and everybody else to be the first one to disclose, to do it before Mr. Putin does it. Obama could start disclosure going.
Oh, the Pope is gearing up. The Pope is gearing up to be the one to do disclosure, because whoever gets the first to disclosure gets credit, and they're the hero for the whole planet. And of course, that's one of the biggest motivations in existence, is how famous can you be in your lifetime and who will remember you.
So the Pope will be like John the Baptist for the ETs.
Jeez. But doesn't that make, when you think about that, doesn't it put everything else into a absurd perspective? I mean, seriously. I'm sorry, but it's like, I know disclosure is a word that gets tossed around. I'm so tired of disclosure. I was like, come on, we already know it. Move on. Jeez. You know, people go, I want a UFO to land on the White House lawn. And what if it did? You'd still argue about what it was.
Yeah, they tell more lies about it. What will the government disclose? They'll disclose lies. Of course it's lies.
Well, we have how many million contactees now? How much more disclosure do you need?
Exactly.
Have you looked at the YouTubes of the UFOs for 2014? My goodness, they're just amazing. I don't know if it's all CGI. I can't tell real from CGI anymore. How do we know anything anymore, right? But whatever, there is a trend, and they're showing. We're not talking about little lights in the sky that move and they change shape. These things are hovering, you know, right above treetop, you know. So what's going on here? Is that disclosure? They can just start showing up everywhere.
I'll give you disclosure. How about that huge darn entrance to the underwater base right off of Malibu, California, that you could see on Google Maps? Have you guys looked at that?
I've seen that. Has anybody tried to scuba dive down there and still live?
You got to go down like 650 feet just to get to the top of it, and then you got to go down another 650 feet just to get to the bottom of the roof, and then it's another 600 feet down to the floor. So it's like humans can dive 120 feet maximum and stay there for a couple minutes. You know, a diver's not going to be able to go down there.
Little submarine.
We have little diving bells.
Yeah, little submarines.
Probably a little submarine. But I'll tell you though, if you were piloting a submarine, would you want to go in there?
Set a drone. Yeah.
There's probes they use all the time for find treasure and stuff.
Something.
It's a thing with a drone with a camera.
Well, yeah, I know. But even if it was connected to a cable, I mean, that's a pretty long cable. You know, it's like, I mean, that thing is huge. And the thing is when you look at that, and it's so easy to see, I mean, it's right there. You just Google Maps. I don't know how we never saw that before. But the thing is that if you look at it, it's like, first of all, it's not a natural formation. Humans clearly did not make it, you know.
Could you see it with sonar? Could you see what's inside?
No, you can see it in Google Maps.
No, I mean, if you send sound waves down, you can see the hollow patterns.
Well, we're just a bunch of humans that are discovering this on Google Maps, so I don't know who's the day that's going to do that, but So tell me what's the latest on that. Who's doing what, or can we do anything? Yeah.
Well, nobody has even really done anything, and there were some UFO researchers who were looking for the entrance, because for a long time we've been hearing that there was a sub-entrance on the West Coast that allowed submarines to enter from underwater and go deep into the interior of the United States. So clearly that is what that is. But again, we didn't make that. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way that we constructed a 650-foot thick roof sitting on 650-foot tall pillars with, the whole thing's, like a couple miles square. It's like, that's not human construction. It's certainly not natural.
Isn't there something, maybe not the same structure, but isn't there an entrance in Montauk in New York? So, that's
I don't know. We better go on Google Earth and start looking.
Montauk. Well, there's a funny-looking entrance down in Antarctica too. I discovered recently, and it kind of resembles, it's not it's on the ground there, but it's under the ice.
And we were talking about Admiral Byrd here a little while ago, and we have Nazi maps that from New Schwabenland that show the entrance, and just recently they've been plotting and they show what Antarctica would look like if the ice was gone, and all of a sudden there's this big channel that bisects the entire continent. Gee, it's like, yeah, that is the channel. So we know there's a big hole up in the north side, but on the south side, they actually have to go underneath the ice cap and navigate to get to the entrance. And we've found, there are Nazi documents that actually show the route and the navigation and how to actually access this interior. And the Nazis have actually mapped the entire interior of the hollow Earth, and they've established a complete new society in there on a what we would consider an island, and that is actually New Schwabenland. New Schwabenland is not a bunch of territory on the continent of Antarctica. New Schwabenland is actually territory on the inside of the Earth.
Right, and the person I had on about 2 weeks ago, he says that they're sending their kids up to our universities because they can just walk out among us, right? So you never know, but they all tend to be kind of like the experiment that Hitler had wanted to have, the blondes and the blue eyes.
What's their program? What are they up to?
Yeah, what's their agenda now?
Well, again, we can only speculate, but if we know that the Earth goes through these epochs, and we know that at the end of these epochs that the surface is essentially wiped clean, and we know that the last epoch probably involved the civilization that we call Atlantis and the civilization that we call Mu or Lemuria, and that they had fighting, and people say, oh, well, they fought, they destroyed themselves either with nuclear bombs or whatnot. Well, regardless, that what probably happened is that this society reached the end of an epoch, and then apparently what happens is these interior entities basically come to the surface and rescue a contingent of the cultures on the surface and bring them down inside. And this has probably happened many, many times over the millennia. Every 20,000 years, they probably repeat this process. And I suspect that when the Nazis gained access to the Hollow Earth, and when they went in there, that they were able to represent themselves as a victim. And they were probably said, look, we're at a war with the rest of the world. The surface dwellers are trying to annihilate us, protect us. And that's probably what they do. And that's why when Operation High Jump took place, the United States Navy basically sent an armada to Antarctica being commanded by Admiral Byrd, that they got their butts kicked. And it wasn't just from fighting against Nazis. It was from fighting against entities from the interior.
Oh, okay, because they have higher technology. Well, the story I heard, and I don't know how true it is or not, but the kids there are a new generation, and they want to come back out and meet humanity. So they're integrating by going to our universities, and they're kind of like rebelling against the generation before. They think grandpa or great grandpa was crazy, so
yeah, they're here for the cannabis and the rap music, huh?
That's what they are. They're up for the cannabis and the rap.
Oh, wow.
So they could be walking among us. Yeah. So that's a fascinating story. It'd be great to have somebody that was an expert on all that. But I was reading about that project. They went down there and they got their butts kicked. So
What kind of weapons were used against them? What did you hear?
I don't know what kind of weapons, but they got their butts kicked. They lost a lot of their. They sent ships down there and planes, and Admiral Byrd just came back licking his wounds, and he lost.
Well,
people.
There's actually an inventory. Okay, there actually was an inventory of all the resources that went down there. They had several surface ships. They had an aircraft carrier. They had submarines, so many airplanes, and so many personnel. They lost all of their airplanes. They lost, I think they lost all of the submarines. One of the main surface ships was sunk, and they lost a large amount of personnel. And this mission, Operation High Jump, was basically publicized as a Jacques Cousteau type thing, going down there and playing with the penguins.
What did the survivors say about how they were annihilated? How were they hit? Was it with a missile?
The Americans, of course, didn't say anything. They clammed up, and that's a big secret. They're probably shipped those guys off to Leavenworth or suicided them. But the Russians have produced. Okay, the Americans produced a documentary about Operation High Jump, and it shows all these Navy ships, and it shows sailors and people playing with penguins and hiking around in the snow, and it looks just like some sort of an Antarctic exploration expedition. But the reality was it was a military expedition. And if you look at Admiral Byrd, what he said publicly prior to the Armada setting sail was, this is a military expedition. This is not exploration. This is a military endeavor. And now the Russians produced a film about Operation High Jump. And in the Russian film, you see the American ships being buzzed by flying saucers.
Aircraft.
Yeah, you actually see it. You see these things like flying between the smokestacks of the damn ships.
Is this on YouTube?
Oh, yeah, it's on YouTube. You can get it right now.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that Thoth and the Emerald Tablet said that they had to sink Atlantis because they found that there were these interdimensional beings that were taking over their council members, and they were able to kind of like take possession of them and assume their form or take them over. So they had to, there was a portal in Atlantis, and so that's why they sank Atlantis. I don't know if it's true or not, but that was the story. And he said, beware. It kind of correlates with David Icke. It says, beware that we stopped them for now, but they're going to come back, and they will take over your leaders of your world, and you won't realize it. So
I suspect that Atlantis was a service-to-self society, and that Lemuria was the opposite. It was a service-to-others society. And one of the things about being service-to-self is that you become an energy consumer. You become and the energy that you consume is actually gravity. Okay, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because think of it like an anchor. The more possessions you have, the more you serve yourself, the more you're stuck to this earth, the more you can't rise up spiritually. And so what they were actually doing, from what I understand, and this has to do with these crystal pyramids and all this, is that they were actually harvesting gravity as an energy from other planets, such as the Moon and Mars. And it was this dependence on this, or addiction to this energy, the gravity, that actually caused the destruction of the society on Mars as well as Atlantis itself. Again, this is just speculation, but I suspect that's what it was. And if I can give you one more example of how this works, the Ark of the Covenant is a good example of that. The Ark of the Covenant was a gravity producer. And if you look at just like crossing the Red Sea, it was the energy, the gravity, the pushing force that actually pushed that water back and allowed them to travel across that little isthmus across the Red Sea. But by the same token, if you look at the history of the Ark of the Covenant, we know that only high priests were able to even get near it, and a mere human who was not a high priest or of the priest sect would die by getting close to it. And the reason is because the high priests were devoted to serving others, so they became gravity givers. People who were not devoted to service to others, and they were more service to self, they are gravity takers. So any gravity taker that comes into contact with a gravity source like the Ark of the Covenant is going to overdose on that energy and die.
We thought that it was radiation, so they probably had.
What's a kind of radiation? I mean, what is radiation? You know, a laser light, which is just light, is also considered radiation. It's called laser radiation, right? But what is it? It's light, so it's just another form of energy from the electromagnetic spectrum. And gravity, obviously, is a form of energy that we don't understand, but it also is on the electromagnetic spectrum.
We have a question. How do the ETs decide who they want to work with?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. Well, first of all, when you say ETs, you're talking about service to self versus service to others. If you look at the service to self entities, obviously they're going to deal with the oligarchs and the evil ones. I mean, it's like we hear it about Nelson Rockefeller rubbing elbows with greys and reptoids and what have you. That's a perfect example. Now, on the other hand, if you look at the opposite, service to other entities, such as the Pleiadians, clearly they are not going to deal with us at all, and the only time that they have dealt with humans would be a situation like with Billy Meyer, who allegedly was a highly evolved soul that they were familiar with from dealing with throughout other lifetimes. So that's why they chose him.
Right. So, have you followed the Billy Meyer story, and what parts do you believe and what parts do you throw out?
Well, I don't like to use words like believe. I like to use words like observe. Okay, I don't toss out any information. I absorb all information. I observe all information, and I don't take even something that I believe to be 100% true. I will not say this is 100% true, because as an observer, I have to entertain any concept, whether or not I believe it or not. So belief is not a word I like to use. That's a definitive. Okay,
right,
that's.
So,
as an observer, observers continue to gather information. We never stop gathering information. So to say that you believe something would mean that you've stopped gathering information because you've come to a conclusion.
Yeah, you believe it, you believe it, you start living it.
Okay, so speculate.
So
man.
speculate. Go ahead.
All right, what are we speculating on again? What was the question?
Something about Billy Meyer. I forgot the question.
Oh, Billy Meyer. Okay, right. Billy Meyer.
I've interviewed. I won't name the name. And Billy Meyer was supposed to be Jesus or something like that.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at.
But it's like the fundamentals. One way you can think of it is that there's a Jesus, or whatever you want to call it, inside each of us.
Right.
And it just is each of us in this holographic universe has a representation or an empathetic part to every other part.
Well, yes. So we're all Jesus, and so.
Well, we're all sons of God.
We're all sons of God.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. We all are.
I agree.
Okay, yeah. But to answer your question about Billy Meyer, I do believe that he photographed real UFOs, and I do believe that he fabricated photographs of UFOs.
Ah, he did both.
And that was a great cake. He had a really good cake.
Yeah. He trash can cover, painted gold, decorated with stuff. Yeah, he did. Clearly, some of the stuff he did was fabricated, but at the same time, I do believe that a lot of it was real.
So let's look at the contactees. We have a lot of contactees that are getting very well known. Okay, we can't use the word believe. What information do you identify with that you at this moment in time believe to be true or real, that is open to further investigation, but at this moment in time you think might be the most logical information that's coming through? How's that?
Well, okay, now you're talking about contactees, a specific individual, or
we have
what?
some that are very, very famous now, that are doing the circuit, and they're telling their versions of reality.
You mean like Stephen Greer or people like that?
Yeah. You mean like T.J. Morris? Janet Lesson?
And Janet Lesson, and we've got, Alex Collier, George Kafazilis, lots of them. The one that had the movies.
Well, all right, Janet. All right, let me just say this, okay? As an observer and somebody that has an open mind, I do not prejudge anybody, and sometimes this can look bad because, like, for instance, I'll have somebody on the show that may come off as being a complete liar, fabricator, and at the same time I entertain them, and it's not because I believe them, it's because I am observing their information, and for them it may be the truth, it's their truth, but we process the information and filter it later. But to answer your question, most of the popular people out there on the circuit that say this or that about themselves, I don't really, I don't really want to entertain those people at all. But that being said, a good example is Bashar. Okay, originally I started out very negative about the whole concept of the channelers and whatnot. I felt that for the most part that those entities that they were channeling, if they were indeed channeling entities, may not be the entities that they think they are. But the first time I saw Bashar, I was impressed with the information and how it was presented, and I am leaning towards accepting and believing as an observer. But but that being said, when someone starts saying they are the reincarnation of this and that, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's your truth. I'm not going to dispute it, but at the same time, it doesn't resonate with me.
Well, as a therapist, when we find that we have 20 Lincolns, that people are saying they're 20 Lincolns, how do you say that? How do you?
They're accessing whatever they are thinking of Lincoln, that part of the Lincoln archetype, and none of them are lying. They're accessing different parts of the archetype. That's all.
Yeah. So there's the archetypal rendition, and also the theory is that souls are not limited to one incarnation, and that ultimately the highest level we're all connected. So they could be accessing the same information, and then they assemble it through their current incarnation because they resonate like the archetype. They resonate with that energy.
But the point is, whatever they say they're doing, what are they actually doing? So what's their behavior? And that's very, very, very interesting. And so that's if somebody says, I am Edgar Casey, and as a result of being Edgar Casey,
gee, who would say that?
Here's the following information that I can tell you in advance, and you can check me out and test the null hypothesis. I'd say, Mr. Casey, I don't care who you are. I'm going to try that. That sounds really interesting.
No, there's something I was going to say, but
go for it. Yes.
Oh, it looks like we're getting down to the end of the show, but.
Yeah, do you want to...
All right, maybe I'll remember what I was going to say, but... I know what it was. Notice how many people out there say that they channel the angel Gabriel, or they channel Saint Germain, or it's like, wait a minute, it's like, I am the reincarnation of Saint Germain. How many times have we heard that coming from multiple different people?
Saint Germain's a busy guy.
Apparently. I can't even channel Sasha half the time.
I want to be Saint Germain. Well, it's like I'll go around telling people I'm Jesus. That's the last thing I want to do. Jeez, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
You kind of look like him, actually.
Yeah, well, when you got a bunch of Templars following you around, you kind of make you wonder sometimes. But no. But anyway, real quick, I'll just give a quick plug for the book. We'll get that out there.
Yes, please. Tell us about.
Well, as you know, when I did the Getty thing over at the Alchemy event back in November 2012, I introduced my book, and T.J. Morris published it, and it was under the title of Cities. It was called Lasers, Cavers, and Magic. Uh-huh. And since then, I've had it re-edited professionally, very, very well done. And I put everything completely in the hands of the editor. The new title of the book is Cities Under the Plane, and of course that's a biblical reference to the Getty as being cities on the plane. Only this is cities under the plane. That has to do with a Revelations scenario. But it's available right now on Amazon Kindle. Eventually it'll be out on paperback, but if you don't have a Kindle, you can download a program or an app that'll allow you to read it on your computer, and it's $7. My God. I'm not going to get rich off of this, but the purpose of writing this was to get this information out there so people could see how it was that I came to where I am now and how I got these conclusions. And if people can see, because it's all about experience, it's just an autobiography, and it's my observations of what I experienced and what I learned as a result of that, and that's all it is. So if somebody and a lot of, have you guys read it by any chance?
No, I've got to get it. I was part of that thing where it disappeared for a while, right? So, I just learned it. You had it back out, and I actually was on the website, and I saw you had a lot of good reviews. So, congratulations. We're proud of you. Oh. And I told you at one point, I think I said, just let go of the one that TJ did, and so you did. I don't know if you listen to me. Nobody ever listens to me, but
I know what you said, Jack. You said just go ahead and do it yourself. Do it yourself.
Yeah,
it's easy. I'll help.
Space. But I am looking for a really good editor if you have one, because that's the key. You need a good editor when you're writing a book. And I just wrote a book called Dance of the Souls, which is my autobiography. And I realize it's going to be about 3 by the time I get done with it, because I go into past lives.
I do know a good editor.
The worst criticism when you go onto the back end of your show or your book on Amazon is you get poor editing or this, that. Like, oh, yes. So it's key. It's crucial to get an editor, because you get too close to material. You just can't be objective about your own stuff.
That's right.
Sasha, you want to say something?
Just that you've provided a lot of material on this show for my friend Occam, who likes to cut up and see what kind of hypotheses can be drawn. What I can say about the things that you've said today is you've given us all kinds of hypotheses or intervening variables that connect the dots in ways that are very efficient, and that is parsimony. That's what works, and so I'm intrigued. I can't wait to read your book.
Yeah, we'll get your book.
All right.
So what's in it that stands out that you want to tell our listeners, because we got about, 5 minutes left or 4 minutes left?
What's in the book?
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. It's really easy to boil that down real quick. But again, service to self is service to others is the secret of the universe. That it really, really is. Building up your psychic skill is the most important thing you can do right now, because the benefits are immense. And I'm not talking just about the ability to learn how to be psychic and to become a healer, but your powers of manifestation grow exponentially. And also the power of your words is one of the strongest things that happens when you develop your psychic skill and you have an increased chi flow and an increased aura and all that sort of thing going on, is that your words carry more gravity, more influence, and people are more intrigued with you and more willing to listen. And ultimately that is the most important thing, because service to others and building up your psychic skill comes from moving information, and information is energy, and when you move energy, you're moving information at the same time. Energy goes one way, information goes back the other. It's a two-way street. So when we share our truth and we get on the radio and all that, not only are we helping and serving, but we are also increasing our chi flow. We get direct benefit. When you're on the radio, like right now, talking to people, all those listeners out there, their energy is going right into you, and this increases your chi flow. Also, very important is that we are not here to fight with each other. We are not here to fight against the enemy. What we are here to do is serve others and to help others that are suffering. So in other words, it is more noble to serve the victim and to help the victim than it is to fight and attack against the oppressor.
Oh, and I think that's what we started the show. You were talking about the guys from Damascus. You had them on your show, and you could see that they're not the enemy. And there was that old cartoon, I've seen the enemy, and we are the enemy. So
we are them, yeah.
Yeah,
Pogo, right, yeah.
Oh, yes, right. So,
and he is us. I've seen the enemy, and he is us.
Right.
Oh,
so take somebody who's the polar opposite of you that you find offensive and go over and take them to lunch. And just sit down and get to know that person, and then you'll see your judgments fade away, and you'll realize if you take a deep look and into especially the right eye, you'll see that the same essence that is yourself is flowing through them, and that we are all one.
Hey, one thing, can I throw something out real quick since it hasn't been done?
Sure.
Everybody that has not gone to the Facebook page for Revolution Radio, please do that. Please go like our Facebook page. We're about ready to hit 3,600 people. Let's get it up to 36,000 people. And also, we really do need those donations. We've only raised $695, and we've got, 17 days left, or no, 13 days left to reach our budget. We got to make another $1,000 in the next 13 days. So step it up, guys. We're a little bit behind, and we really do need some help.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. Oh, I wanted to ask you, are you going to be at any kind of conferences this year? Or would you like to see?
Nobody wants me.
Nobody wants you. Okay, we're going to create our own conference, people. So go to Aquarian Radio and donate for the conferences, because we want to create some conferences.
No, let me just say this. I am thinking about putting on a conference in the summer here, or summer or spring of next year, God willing, of course. And I'm actually going to probably have Terry Joyce, another fellow host here at the network, help me out with that. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be in Orange County. But what I really, really want to do is put an event on that costs like practically nothing to go to.
That's key, because these things are so expensive. Most of us are economically challenged. We can't afford to get there and, pay high fees. So
sometimes you can rent a space like in an expo and have your own tent and so that have somebody carry the major expense, but you could still have a little part of that action.
Mm-hmm. I'm envisioning an outdoor event, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the weather cooperates, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, count us in. We'll help you do it. I put on a different type of conference for 8 years, so I've done conferences.
Conspiracy Con at Burning Man.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Well, I want the focus to be on healing, and maybe we'll throw in some cannabis stuff too.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Burning Man South. Okay. Come to the Healing Center. Well, an outdoor event would be great. Okay, we have a minute, a half minute, final words. What would you like to say, Steve?
All right, my big show is Thursdays on Studio A at 10 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to next week, this Thursday, I'm going to have a woman from Damascus, and she's going to give us a woman's perspective on what's going on over there with Damascus and ISIS and all of that, and that should be very interesting. And I look forward to having the guys from the Donetsk Republic back real soon. So we're gonna keep plugging away, and I'm not gonna let those guys beat me down, and you guys, please give us support, because we need it. We need the morale. We're on the front lines, and we're getting beat on the head. We need we need your economic support as well as your emotional support and psychological support. So please tell us we're doing a good job, and let us know that you appreciate what we're doing.
Oh, and I was wrong. We actually have a couple more minutes. Okay, so how do we these guys, what happened to them? Did you lose track of them? Are they still in your world?
The guys in Ukraine, they are certainly, well, let me just say this, is that, again, the people that I had on last week, this was the actual representative of 4 million people. He was the official representative, so I was humbled to have them on the show. It was a great show, huh, Sean? But the thing is that they're risking their lives. They're under attack. They've got high explosive shells falling all around. People are dying left and right, and yet they're doing everything they can to get the word out. Their official job as representatives of those 4 million ethnic Russians was to try to get the truth out there, and that's what Revolution Radio is all about. And this is why people like Hawk are so important, because he has no fear. And we're not afraid, and that's the main thing. That's another thing that people need to understand, is that in order to grow spiritually and psychically, fear has to go away. You got to get over the fear of death, the fear of losing your possessions, the fear of anything. So that's what it's all about. We're here to spread the truth with no fear.
What about those UFOs that were shown in the Ukraine? Did you report on that at all?
No, we didn't talk about that. Unfortunately, the guy was a Russian speaker, and he actually had to have a woman doing the translation. No callers came in and asked about that, but I suppose if somebody wanted to call in and ask about the UFOs, that certainly would have been an interesting subject.
Yeah, because there's a lot of YouTubes on it. What did you want to say, honey?
This program, a lot of you, will probably open up the thought that what's going on in Ukraine is so different when you look at it from the people that are living in this city that is being shelled on an almost continuous basis, and it is a humanitarian crisis.
Yeah,
it is. It's crazy. I mean, these high explosive shells landing in there. They're in the process of right now of trying to destroy the infrastructure for the entire region. 4 million people you destroy. That means, it's very similar to what's going on in Gaza. Obviously, Gaza is much more concentrated, and it's a smaller area that's being attacked, but it's very similar. And the most important thing that we need to understand is that these are humans. These are real people, just like us. They bleed. They have emotions, everything like us. And again, the best thing that we can do is give them emotional support and let them know that we do not support the evil ones that are causing this war.
Thank